So you want to window mod a PS2, or maybe just LED mod it. Stay tuned and let me show you how it's done. Let's first cover the tools and supplies I used. Soldering iron, solder, assorted 22 gauge wire, 220 grit sandpaper, scissors, X-Acto knife, markers and a pencil, wire strippers and clippers, large and small screwdrivers, flathead and Phillips head, masking tape, electrical tape, a carpenter's square, rotary tool with at least a cutting disc. A wide assortment of tips can really help but aren't necessary, large file, a set of jeweler's files, a hot glue gun or some type of strong adhesive such as a 2-part epoxy. I used tin snips, though the cutting disc could also accomplish what I used the tin snips for. And LEDs, I'm using 50/50 RGB strips that I'm wiring just for blue, but you could go another route and get 470 ohm resistors and some 5mm LEDs. Time to tear this down. Start by removing any accessories you may have. For me, it's just a memory card and a network adapter, which is held in place with 2 flathead screws. No hard drive for me, at least not yet. Go ahead and flip over the console and remove these 8 caps that are hiding the 8 screws we need to remove. The caps are easily pried off with a small flathead screwdriver. Now, my console was open previously, but if yours is fresh, you will need to cut and remove the warranty sticker. Now, the top is almost free from the bottom. There is a ribbon cable that connects the reset and eject button to the top shell. To remove this, we will need to pry upwards. Take care not to break the mounting tabs, at least not both of them. Before I decide on what sort of window I want to cut, I take a look at the innards and figure out what exactly I want to be visible. For me, this is going to be as much as possible without having to do any major reworking on the case. I started by prepping the top lid, which is just covering the entire top with masking tape, then trimming off the excess with an X-Acto knife. The masking tape provides a great medium that you can sketch on with a pencil easily, which means you can erase and tweak your design to your liking. My final design isn't much of a design, it's just a large rectangle with 2 inches of spacing all around. This is as big as I could make it without sacrificing the ability to screw the case back together. So make note of all the little mounting tabs and whatnot on the underside and work your design around them. For me, this little bracket was in the way, but this can easily be trimmed down without making it unusable. Once you're ready, get to cutting. Here's my rough cut. At this point, I switched to hand files. It is really easy to go overboard with a rotary tool, and if you do, it could ruin the design. So like I said, this bracket needs to be trimmed, so I trimmed it. Simple. After a bunch of sanding, I like to place the top shell back on to decide how I want to cut the top of the DVD drive, because you know, you like spinning discs. Once you decide, you will need to remove these 4 Phillips head screws. I'd recommend leaving at least 2 of these mounting points in place. Which 2 is up to you based on your design. Now, here was my first design. As you can see, I kept the 2 mounting points. Now, the top of the DVD drive is made with a very flimsy plastic, which made it a breeze to work with, but on the downside, this design came out being really flimsy. And I found if you give it a good bump with no disc in the drive, the magnetic force will lock it to the bottom, resulting in not being able to close the disk drive. Now, a solution for this would be stiffening it up somehow, or just not cutting it like this. Instead, what I decided to do was float the, I'm not exactly sure what they're called, but I'm going to call it the spindle magnet. To do this, I first needed to cut my plexiglass to size. Remember to cut it bigger, then trim it down. You can always take away, but you can't add. I got mine to fit pretty snugly. This would be a good time to attach it with either hot glue or your adhesive, but I'm planning on at least one other case mod and a paint job, so I'm leaving mine unattached for now. To float the magnetic spindle, I first needed to see where I needed to mount it. To do this, I just put it back together and lined it up by eye. Then I took a marker and made a mark on the top. From here, I applied a tiny amount of hot glue and stuck it centered with the mark I had just made. Using some epoxy would be better, but I think I will be painting this piece of plastic, so keeping it removable is key for me. But I just wanted to show you how it was done. Now I cut this little piece of the top shell to hide where it will be glued, Also wanted to keep the PS2 engraving, so this will also be mounted later after paint. Okay, so what's a huge window and spinning discs without lights? Well, let's get to that. Firstly, remove these two Phillips head screws. At this point, your bottom lid is free to come off. You can remove the ribbon cable from the controller ports or just flip it over carefully. Here are the points on the power board. One thing to note is these become live in standby mode, so as soon as you flip the switch on the rear, the lights come on. This isn't a problem for me as I don't leave the PS2 in standby mode ever. I plan on mounting my LED strip here. This will illuminate the front intake grill. But to do this to my liking, I will need to remove these pieces of metal that are blocking my path. So I removed the 4 screws, then pulled straight up to move the power board out of the way. At this point, the little metal case just came right off. I contemplated just leaving it off and may just do that later, as it's not really doing anything, and I can't see any harm in it being removed, but for now I will keep it. I just bent down this front part, then I took my tin snips and removed this other part. Now that I have the area cleared for the strip, I clean the area with some rubbing alcohol for maximum adhesion. Now I'm being extra cautious, so I put down some electrical tape first, then I trimmed it down. Everything is grounded through this metal cage, so I didn't want to take any chances on shorting the LED strip out. Here's the strip mounted and the wires attached. All that's left is attaching them to the appropriate points on the bottom of the board. Now would be a good time to test and see if your LEDs are working. In my case, they are. You should also run wires up to the top lid now, then get that all connected and put everything back together. I'm leaving everyone hanging as I still have other things I need to do, so it's half finished, but the wait will be worth it, and depending on when you're watching this, I may have already finished all the other mods up. But at least you know how to accomplish this mod on your own, and even being half finished, it does look pretty cool and gives you a good idea of how yours will look. Thanks for watching. Be sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and share this video. It really helps me out. And if you have any questions or just have something to say, leave a comment. Follow me on Twitter at TechnoOnTop for channel updates. And until next time, peace.